Hello, everybody. Welcome. We've got a couple friends here, a little different. We'll get to that in a second. I'll mute them just for a second. Sorry, guys, but they will be unmuted very shortly. Tonight is a effort in trying to put live shows together, and sometimes they are not the show that you're anticipating. So we are doing a version of the show tonight. I don't think we're anticipating making this the actual podcast. Maybe we'll drop this in your feed if it's fun from a podcast level, but we're going to be live here for the next 30, 40 minutes with myself, Tom Blick, and Mr. Victor Leone, my directors of stadium operations and events accordingly, and just talk about the events of the day and some fun stuff. Jerry and Steve were both unfortunately unavailable tonight, and we really wanted to do a standard podcast to really lead into the beginning of the season, give you like a little bit of a preview of next week, since the following week from tonight, we're talking about April 27th, next Tuesday, we're going to do around 8 p.m. A joint podcast with ourselves, Fairweather, Two Balls, all of those folks. So it's going to be a pretty fun join up. And maybe we can have some of them either crash the party tonight a little bit to promo, but the idea is next week, that's what we'll be doing. So we wanted to give you a nice little, normal quote unquote show, but also with Victor here to preview the events that he's been working on in terms of the form of watch parties and things like that. So we'll do that possibly Thursday this week, we think, at 9 p.m. So same time. But we're switching to Thursday this week just to accommodate Jerry and Steve. Jerry is a little bit under the weather after his second vaccine, which is awesome. But everybody, and Victor can tell us about this a little bit, right? Victor, you got your shot also, like sort of on a similar timetable, and you are just over the hump, you think, from like when it was really that 48-hour period after, right? Here, I'm going to unmute you. Sorry, I think you're mute. It's my bad.
Yeah. I started to recover. Actually, when I got your text to come on today, I was passed out trying to watch some shows on Netflix, but I honestly passed out. And last night I got my shot yesterday, and immediately after I got the shot, I almost think it's a psychological thing. I started to, because I've talked to a lot of people and their side effects, I started to think I feel kind of numb. I feel a little warm. But it wasn't until I got home later that afternoon that I really started to get warm and tired, and really feeling the side effects. And so when you text me, I was really excited because I haven't been on the podcast yet, but at the same time I was half asleep. But obviously here we are. And as I was telling you before this, you're not supposed to drink according. Well, I googled it. Right, Google tells you all sorts of things. It says it's not recommended to drink, but I think I started to feel a little better when I got the text, and here we are.
Yeah, right. It's definitely something where after a little bit, you kind of just almost need that comfort or that little bit to like bring your nerves down a bit, even if your body's working hard on building those antibodies and all that stuff. It's definitely one of those things where sometimes it almost just helps you feel better, especially after you've gone through kind of the ringer. There's a little bit of soreness. Remember from my first shot for sure. So I know that that's just increased. They say like almost tenfold for certain people, and we get well Jerry soon. I'm sure you will, and be right back, even super Jerry here soon. And Steve is still was back home a little bit, and I think traveling again back in the land of the desert. So just had some issues with kind of navigating his way in. And no, it's the fault of us trying to run a live show at the same time every week. Some weeks you're just going to not hit that live mark the same way. SNL is a mark of this, right, where they've had live television for 40 years, and you end up with some funny stuff on TV. In this case, we got a fun little change up for you, so we'll just be talking about here stuff we might not talk about on the show. It's a little more fun, right? So we'll talk about that here for a little bit. We're thinking 30, 40 minutes. We'll see how long it goes. Maybe longer. Who knows? Sometimes we've gone for 4 hours and we weren't even planning on it. Probably not tonight, considering what Victor just told you in terms of his vaccine. Also, because today is a nice and green day, not the band, but the date on the calendar, where we're sporting some green, Victor and I, today to match a little bit here. And Tom's got his
got a mint green on. Mint green. We're not lime green. Come on.
It's true. It's minty. It's very minty. Like surgical. Yeah, it's a more surgical. I've got a surgical person in my background here in terms of Mr. Guerrero. I inherited one of those kits on a trip to Merch Mansion to pick up this shirt and hat, actually. So Victor got to be a model when he showed up. I got a cool. You never know what's going to happen to it on a trip to Merch Mansion. It's pretty cool. So shout out to him. Shout out to the club. It was pretty cool. It was just like really was kind of like, okay, we're getting into the season, just planning mode, and went in and just blew me away. I was like, oh man, this is like, I wasn't expecting this. So thanks, guys. In terms of so green code, as Espen's pointing out, it's for any of you who celebrate, congratulations. Have a great day. Hopefully you've taken advantage of deals, or even if you like certain beers that have hoppier, danker flavors that come out this time of year. I tried to find the Enjoy by 420 myself, and I could not. And we saw in our What Are You Drinking? I think you have to scope it out. You have to really go hunt that this year. It seems like that's a really hot, good one. Some of those Enjoy buys go really well. Some of them are also kind of like not as big of a hit, right? They almost have to like push them at the end. Some just fly off the shelves. This seems to be one of those that was hard to find. Speaking of which, Victor, I owe you some money, and I got to pick up those beers from you that I reserved that you were hunting down around your neighborhood.
I think I have one left for you, man. I got to be honest.
You drink it. I was just saying, if you invested, I would go in with you. Not that like, hey, if you want to drink them, like you got them. So you were
that was my excuse. That was my excuse that day. I was sitting there with my wife, and I go, look, Drew says he's going to buy 2 off of me, so I have to take them. And she actually predicted, she goes, you're going to drink them before you give them to Drew. And there's one left.
They're too good. Well, I appreciate you keeping the one. You don't have to. Again, you hunted, and so again, you get to eat what you kill, I guess, in the sense of the hunter-gatherer lifestyle of the 21st century. But yeah, man, it was it's pretty exciting here to be getting close to the season, and we're all pretty excited. Victor will be able to tell us about our events a little more on Thursday when we're all a little more coherent, hopefully, just together as a pod. But the one thing I'll point out, just kind of club wise, before we jump into, I think what Tom and I kind of have had in our mind all day in terms of like what's happening with our club worlds. But Nick Duffy's pointing out how good was that video they dropped earlier. We'll pull this up on Thursday too and play it a little bit. I was going to download the media and stuff, but we were kind of going through the pre-show where it wasn't a show, and decided to kind of go with this. So in terms of what they dropped, it was pretty cool. If you go back and watch it, it's on their Twitter right now. It's literally just an hour ago, I think they dropped it or so. Landon kind of going through. Tom, do you want to summarize how you felt about the video?
Was it the one where he drops the swear word? Yeah, just quick little video about how we're all thinking at the moment, and Landon just lets out a fuck yeah. It's amazing.
Yeah, I want to go through a wall, man.
Whenever that man speaks.
Yeah, so I couldn't find oh yeah, like then just the access plus like we've all thought those moments, right? We watch him, you see him on the field, we think of him in the locker room like that. I don't remember seeing him do speeches like that as a captain for U.S. men's national team that got caught in video, but you imagine it in your head. So being able to see that access as a coach is pretty cool. And as a manager, be able to kind of have that. So I couldn't find 420, but I did get FML. So that's what happens when you can't find 420, you FML, which is actually my favorite stone creation out of the Virginia Beach location, which I don't think is still operating. Is it? I don't know. Either way, they created it out there and they shipped it over here and still make it here too, I think. But it's really good. What are you guys drinking? Since Victor, you said you did hydrate with a little bit of a little yeast hydration.
I got some Elysian Space Dust here. Oh, where's the camera? There you go. There you go. And then I have this as my next year. I posted this on the Discord yesterday. I picked up a pack of some IPAs here. Captain Dynamite from New Belgium.
Oh, yeah.
It's a nice looking can.
I like their artwork. I was saying on the Discord yesterday, what drove me to New Belgium was their artwork on their cans. Whenever I see a cool 6-pack, I'll pick it up just because of the artwork.
Yeah, you got some nice cans there, man. You also have a nice aluminum thing with beer in it too.
Oh my! Oh my!
Yeah. We're getting weird here. It's a weird session.
420, baby.
For anybody joining us, this is a different thing than we do normally. It is 420, so that's why we didn't know. It's not why we did this, but it just ended up being that our podcast tonight did not come together with our usual hosts, so we're just kind of hanging out and doing a fun little kind of different thing. This is sort of what we do on our Together Thursdays. So if you are a member, you do have access to those. We did last Thursday. It was pretty fun. We broke some news that we will talk about a little more in the podcast. The other nice thing is by Thursday, I think we'll have a little more clarity on some of that news. Part of that has to do with our section and having eye on the Harriers over there. They come my way. They go Victor's way, and then they come my way. He's a little west of where I am. So you'll get them flying out that way, and then every once in a while you'll get night missions, or you'll get kind of ospreys kind of coming in where you just hear.
I got Miramar here down the street, so you can hear them very often.
We get the eastbound, you get the westbound kind of your way. So it's fun. Is that an earthquake or just a huge huge thing flying overhead? Who knows? The Mesa corridor up here, kind of across. So, but yeah, it's fun to have anybody who's hanging out here with us in the comments. Let us know what you're up to. Let us know what you're thinking. But let's dive into kind of a conversation about anybody. We do love the Marines. We love all of you, but their birds are kind of noisy. They got some noisy birds. Noisy beds, as Nick might say. But we and it was shout out to Nick. Him and I got to go to the Sockers game on Sunday. Did you guys watch that?
I did.
Yeah, I know Thomas went along a little bit. It was awesome. It was cool to be there. We were kind of 2 rows back, and it was fun to be a part of that moment. But it was just awkward to be in an arena where like you don't want to get there before because you're like, there's nothing to do. I'm going to be there for 2 hours. I can only go to the bathroom and I can only bring in 1 bottle of water. No refreshments. You're not allowed to smuggle things in.
Really?
Supposedly people did. But you're not supposed to. And then nothing was open. And but you didn't know that going in. You weren't like, what's the situation? Am I allowed to bring anything? And you know, I didn't see anything being confiscated, but we showed up at a point where it was just very minimal security and stuff. So it was a line and that kind of thing too. So just a really odd kind of event in terms of showing up to the feeling. But like most of the great matches I've ever been to, it actually had this weird just kind of air to it beforehand. No one knew it was going to happen kind of feeling to it somewhat. So it ended up going like 3 hours inside the arena, 3 or 3.5 hours, where you're just like, okay, I need to go get some water. And so at the end of it, we ran to go get some water and had a nice dinner in Temecula on the way home. But it was fun to roll with him and see that moment. What were your guys' takeaways just from watching it? It's pretty interesting.
That was just one hell of a game, start to finish. From the actual game 2 to the mini game, that was unfortunate the way we got our second goal with Ontario's goalie going down and having to bring in the backup. But that whole Child's flick over his head to the winning goal and then just the defensive stand at the end of it. Just absolutely amazing. Balls to the wall.
Yeah, it was pretty incredible to see that goal at the end. Was just kind of one of those things that I was listening to the Soccer's Overtime, so shout out to Jerry. He did get to do one podcast today, I guess not ours. Just kidding, Jerry. I know that he's not feeling great, so prayers for Jerry, and again he'll hopefully be feeling like Super Jerry come a day or so from now. But he got a second vaccine for anybody just kind of joining in. And so we're all hanging out here tonight a little bit as the alternate crew doing a fun alternate version of the show here, just with some alternate content that normally wouldn't be on our supporter show. A little bit talking about the Sockers right now. Sockers are one of those things where Jerry was there working his butt off. I saw him and I actually didn't see him. I just saw him running around. I didn't get to see him actually come over and say hi just because he was working so hard the whole game, because it was back and forth and intense. But you got to the end there and it was just one of those goals where listen to them talk about it again, the podcast, you saw it in slow motion. You saw it kind of come over, kind of the kick over and then kind of back and around. You couldn't believe he found that window, especially when you played it back. We were on the other end, so it was harder to tell how close it was. And then when you watch it, it's literally a foot. He couldn't have fitted in a better window and had given up kind of a goal in the first game, the second game, but the game before the mini game, the actual game. That was on Serta, and so for him to kind of come back and make the game winner, for Childs to redeem himself after having really what was an un-Childs-like performance, very uncomposed performance for him, who's as the captain usually the guy who doesn't make those kind of mistakes, and felt like he let his team down, to redeem himself. You could see it kind of on their faces, was the way that you could write it. That's the only other way it could feel, because it was just so amazing to be there. I was at the Western Conference Final a couple of years ago where they lost to Ontario on a really crappy goal, where it was just kind of in an overtime do or die situation, and banged it in and just kind of off the top of the crossbar. I think it was Tayu, and against this team. And so they've just got a lot of bad juju and bad memories with these guys. And so in their arena, went there, took them down, took the cup. And so 15th time champions. It's again, local soccer is something that's pretty cool to support, and I felt pretty cool going. But It felt safe. It was nice, but it was also one of those things where, again, to feel safe, it was very limited. It's hoping that our games here in about a month or 6 weeks from now at home are a little more open, at least their accessibility to vendors. Just anything, just any food or any drink is much more helpful inside a stadium if you're going to be there for 2 to 3 hours is what I found. So it doesn't have to be much, just anything, just literally just another bottle of water or a pretzel. Like that's all I'm looking for. Nothing crazy here, but that was my takeaway from going. So today, a lot of stuff happened in the footballing world, not really our USL world in general. We did have some fun stuff this week. Again, we'll talk about on Thursday in a more formal setting. But as far as Tom and I are concerned, Tom is an Everton fan. I am a Spurs fan. Victor, do you have any sort of like a British club affiliation or Euro club affiliation?
Just no, actually, just Leon. And it's funny because I was talking to somebody on Saturday. A couple of things that I want to do different this year. I don't really follow baseball. I root for Padres because they're our home team. But I told myself I'm going to start watching more baseball, specifically the Padres. I try to record and watching. And then I told myself that I was going to try to wake up early and watch some European soccer to be able to join those conversations on Discord because I see a lot of talking about it, and I don't know who they are or the players. I know the teams because obviously I grew up playing FIFA. So I always like the German teams. I always, Leon, I always do career, and my player that I create for myself always somehow ends up in either Germany or some small team. But Germany, I guess I would pick a team in Germany.
Yeah, there you go. Then you try and get transferred to your club, and then you save and go back 20 times, and it never happens.
Exactly.
Tom and I talked about this once. So I was like, "Is there a trick to getting transferred to your club?" He's like, "No, man. You just gotta."
I wish there was. You either start with them, or you just hope for the best.
Yeah, you get in like a loop sometimes, and you only get like the same 3 clubs who want to transfer for you because your fee's too high, or they don't need the player of your type. The problem with Spurs is I like to play striker, and so Kane is always like the problem. It's like, well, we don't want to start you because we've got a 92 player there. Like it's not going to happen. So yeah. Anyway, the announcement on Sunday. So since literally the last time we talked as a podcast, or as locals, even on Thursday. 6 clubs from the British League, but also from all over Europe. You have Juventus, you have Barcelona, you have Real Madrid, but specifically my club Spurs was in there as almost a joke, as kind of a sidecar, like, hey, we made our way in, and people let us in, and we may be in on financial merit, but really performance has been there. But I'd say honestly, it's not to the level of some of these other clubs. But really, the idea was to create almost an alternative Champions League. That was really what they proposed, but it felt to a lot like this was the beginning of a breakaway or a slippery slope to a independent or separate, MLS almost like league, in the sense of there is no promotion, there's no relegation. It's simply this collection of teams and whoever they feel like entering. As a competition, what they proposed was essentially a replacement for a Champions League or really any cup competition, most likely to fall out of their domestic cups, even if they remained in their domestic leagues, the clubs that proposed this. But again, not being local, not being from here, this proposal or something that shaked up the world football pyramid to say, to some reflect on our own American system and say, is that okay? I know that, in Mexico as well, they've become a little bit more closed as well, so that there's reflection there as well. And I think for anybody in any footballing sense to say what's going on with us, and then also what does this reflect the culture with the sport overall in the world. Felt like today was kind of the culmination of a discussion of 48 hours where this was widely rejected by most people, I think, including those here, and generally supporters of clubs most places who have that kind of relationship with a club feel like they have ownership, just through equity, even if it's not tangible in terms of something on a balance sheet. It feels like we have that. So for me personally, that's where I was coming from, and it always felt like something that was not going to work, but not surprised that people propose this because they are billionaires owning these things who feel like they have the equity. And so this is a conversation that I feel like has been strained for about 10 years now. Since the Champions League TV deals have re-upped and become NFL-like numbers, and with NFL-like owners, was only an inevitable conversation that ended up here. So it's strange to be a part of it in some ways, as my club was pulled into. But I think alternatively, we look at it in a very strange position of we're almost an add-on, or we're almost in there when we shouldn't be, in a sense of, as a team, what we've always valued the most was being an underdog and having the ability to run at some of these competitions domestically and in Europe, like we did in Champions League and had a fun run. It's those are the kind of things that make you enjoy it. So it is difficult to say that this is going to put us in a footing, even if financially it puts us in a space where, hey, we're untouchable. It wasn't really competitively something I was very interested in. So Tom, what was your take on it? Obviously, as an Everton fan, you didn't have you would be on the alternate side of this, where say we left and there's all this green pasture in the Premier League, but would it be the same? Would it feel go from there, I guess, and then kind of yeah.
So two schools of thought. One being just to let you guys go, because we'd finally actually be at the top where we've been planning to be. But the realistic side is it just wouldn't feel right, because I want to when Everton finally decide to get good, I want to be able to say that I've watched them beat United, beat City, beat Liverpool on their way to getting a trophy and clinching a European spot. It just wouldn't feel right saying, "Oh, we beat Newcastle and West Ham and whoever else." So it just feels right that they finally stayed, listened to the fans. Maybe some change will come to the Premier League to make it a little bit more competitive.
Force out some of these owners who view their fans as commodities and not as the fuel to their business. As I've liked to say, it's the car doesn't go anywhere without the gas, right? If the supporters are the gas in the gas tank, it's like you can build the best engine in the world, the best car in the world. You can make it the fanciest stadium in the world with the most expensive players, Manchester City. But is it anything without the history or without the support in a way that's relevant? That's always the question. And not to point out City specifically, I think they were the first to pull out because they were the last asked in, from what I understand. But and just from the little I've parsed of this, and for them financially, I don't think it made as much of a big deal since they have other backing and other sources of money that are more lucrative, honestly, for them. But nonetheless, their ability to pull out and make this whole house of cards crumble is fantastic for I think most people who believe in the spirit of competition generally. The difficulty being that the organization that wins somewhat in retaining these teams is also the one that kind of forced them out in the form of UEFA, who hasn't made it competitive for them in some ways, but at the same time is not itself great. So as fans, we kind of, as Tom said, have to look at ourselves and say, what can we do to force a change, or tell clubs maybe supporting from half a world away, how do we make it more how do we make it to where we can say this isn't something that we're part of the problem, in the sense of not making it about the local support first, and making sure that they're always taken care of, or that is the focus of the clubs, even if we want to support these clubs ourselves from wherever we want to. So I think that that's an open discussion that I think will continue as we reflect and kind of decide what we want to do as people and individually, what this means to us when our club decided to do this. I think for me, I broke a lot of trust with this ownership, obviously, that's their end game. So it makes it difficult, and our supporters trust has organized, I think, a few different campaigns to see that through in terms of what the general feeling of our supporters group, not supporters group, but supporters base is with Tottenham, as groups are more general when it comes to these kind of clubs generally that are built this way. But it's an interesting time to be in this discussion, especially as we look at our club being thrown in discussions of MLS every other week, and things like that in different leagues within the American structure, to see what's going on around the world. So that's why we all, really hinge on this discussion and reflect. For anybody who watched the Discord in the last, 24, 48 hours, who was just like, what is happening here? These people are losing their minds. And that's part of it, is just that we see the writing on the wall that these decisions and this projection affects, not from just what they're doing, but what we might end up doing, here in America, or just around the world in general, when it comes to buying and selling players. All that kind of stuff hinges on really the top of the pyramid. That's why we call it a pyramid, is that it does funnel up eventually to about 4 to 5 to 10 really big clubs. When you're talking about who's a buyer or seller, eventually everybody's a seller except for those type of teams. And so financially, how do we make it more fair for the people who aren't in that space, while also those clubs have built up a distinct advantage of being in that position. that they own, but they need to run their clubs fairly, and they need to do financing correctly too. I think that's a big part of this with some of these, especially Spanish clubs. I know have some finance issues, and I wouldn't say that none of the British clubs don't either. It sounds like the Glazers possibly might as well. So those are the kind of things where they need to do it fairly and do their finances more on the up and up and stuff that you can support as a supporter and somebody who cares about this kind of stuff. If you're listening, is support clubs like AFC Wimbledon. They're a great club who is built by the fans who, after their club left them, literally moved like the Chargers, which is rarely, if ever, happened in European, competition of Open Football Association competition. The MK Dons, who ended up, in Milton Keynes. They decided, hey, we're going to start a fan-owned club, so it can't be moved. It's owned by the supporters, and we're going to try and build it from the lowest league that we can enter, and or the highest league we can enter, essentially, and then build our way back up towards the Premier League. And so it's that's an option for you as a person to express yourself and say, hey, I don't want to be a part of something that might be corrupted or owned by somebody who might take it in a direction ever. So that's a way to go. And obviously Germany with their 50+1 rule has got a nice run out in our Discord as well. So those are the kind of concepts that as supporters we can back or at least give voice to here and maybe make change here locally. You guys have any other thoughts kind of on what's playing out here in terms of what's happened? Jose Mourinho being fired, any of that? No? Okay. We'll move on. Just kind of like Spurs did when they buried it under this whole news cycle. I told people about how PR works. It's pretty brilliant.
That one caught me off guard. I just woke up, saw the news, and then my buddy, who's also a Spurs fan, said that Mourinho's out. I'm like, okay. I didn't think you were in. I know you guys are in bad form. Okay.
Yeah, I think after the United game, it was pretty understood he was out. It was just a question of contract-wise, could they let him go? Then people said this might be the justification, was this weird league concept. But I think ultimately it just came down to the fact that he had lost the locker room at a hyperspeed, right? COVID compresses everything. It seems like relationships. Mm-hmm. It seems like a lot of relationships, unfortunately, for people either have gotten way better, you've gotten closer with your partner or your spouse or your roommate, or you realize you can't stand each other and you have to get out of that living situation. It seems like it compresses that. Seems like it did that for the football club. So his timeline, usually 3 years. It was a year and a half, about 2x speed. There you go. Just like listen to our podcast. I'm sure some of you do that. So, and I probably sound maddening at that speed. So I probably apologize for you. There's Corbin being a part owner of AFC Wimbledon, doing the right thing, man. So there you go. But that's a way to support, a difference model, right? And something that you could do possibly besides ending up in this position again. And that's up to partially football associations. It's where, we here have to make a decision of what we want to ultimately push forward. And I think with a great owner here who aligns with our supporters, he makes us feel like we have equity in the club. And that's how I've felt since even before Andrew signed on as a chairman. Warren's done a great job of collating all of us with this. And I think we've all felt like we have a stake in this, especially with the way that they act on the field and off. I personally feel like that. So it's as they go on, I know they have the best interest of the community at heart and not just money. Even if they do chase a bigger league or a bigger stadium or anything like that, I know that they genuinely care about what we think and what we want as people, because that's really ultimately, I think, a community goal. I don't think it's a thing that's going to be an individual selfish thing. I think it's generally always a good thing that when, as a community, when we decide we want something, that it's usually the best way forward, which is awesome. So ways to do that kind of stuff, which is fun. Kim's right. Jose's so mad, and by man she means mad that nobody's talking about him. That's pretty accurate, Kim. So we'll move on from that topic a little bit, unless you guys bring back any other talking points or interesting things there. Chappie's got a great question here. What do you think about Beckham criticizing the Super League? MLS exactly the same thing, which he is an owner in, right? He not only was a player in and made a lot of money coming to play for, but also was a owner. It's not like Landon came out and said like, hey, I'm like super against the Super League, but at the same time, it wouldn't be hypocritical if he did as an American player, but as a British player to have played in the Premier League, then come over here and then take ownership stake in the MLS, but also be super critical of the Super League. It's kind of interesting. That is a kind of dichotomy that I could see that people might project, or a hypocrisy possibly that you could project into that. Any thoughts on that, Victor or Tom?
I'll let Victor go first.
I was going to say, I haven't been following, and partially because I don't have a European team. I haven't been following that subject too much. I honestly found out through you guys on Discord, and then I went on Twitter, but I haven't read too much about it, to be honest.
I think the general thought from most footballers who play in the Premier League, at least, is that this is anti-competition, right? That this is anti-competitive, and that therefore, being modeled, as I said, after something like the NFL, it has no place in their sports, which is, unassailable in the ability to compete from one level to another with things like the FA Cup or the League Cup or whatever. So for British clubs, especially, to associate themselves with this tarnishes the thought of what the Football Association stood for years, even though the Premier League was created as a breakaway from the actual Football Association itself, and all these other kind of points that you could get into as almost rehashings of this similar kind of vein. But most would say it was a step too far, I think is the point that a lot of them would say. I don't know what Beckham's exact comments were, but that seems to be the general tone from a lot of the players, is that and whatever this was from a money standpoint, it's just a selfish move as opposed to something that enhances at least the pie for the sport as a whole. And what we always say, all boats rise in the tide, right? When we talk about either San Diego soccer or American soccer as a whole, that when things get better for certain clubs, it might rise everybody up. In this case, that it seemed to be more of cutting the head off the snake, right? Or cutting the snake off the head, and the head just floating and not needing the body anymore, and the body just withers, right? Because it doesn't have access to the nutrition that the head might provide in the sense of these, upper echelon clubs. So, that's where Beckham being an owner, I think, is kind of interesting. Tom, what's your take, I guess?
So my whole thing with this, that when the MLS started, they wanted to make themselves look as much of an American sport as possible, and that's why there's not promotion relegation. There's really not. I don't think there was a league at that time. I was super young when MLS started. I don't think that there was a league that could be on par with MLS talent, especially now. There's a few USL teams that could make the jump. Phoenix being one of them. I couldn't. Yeah. Maybe Tampa Bay, some of the big guys. But at that time, they just needed to find a way to make themselves look good to the American population, and that fell right in with, well, let's just have playoffs. And it's just stuck with it ever since. I'm a fan of playoffs. I don't think anybody would disagree with that, because playoffs are exciting, but I think now would be the time. You see this change happening. Now would be the time to implement a relegation promotion system. I mean, USL has 3 leagues. What's stopping them? What's stopping the USL from doing it, and then MLS incorporating it as well?
But again, relegation. That's promotion is not, right? Like the idea that, because at this point promotion was a problem for a while, right? Like that what you're talking about is exactly correct in the sense of Louisville. Let's look at the last few champions, right? Like Louisville, and even last year, if it would have been Phoenix or Tampa, either of those teams has a stadium site. They have, secured funding to a certain degree. I think Tampa, the league isn't as in love with their funding, but if we made it open enough, I'm sure they could get the $100 to $200 million required to meet the requirements, right? If we made it more open, then make charging them $300 million just to have a conversation about joining the league, right? That's the kind of things where I think it opens up a bit. But relegation, as Kim said here, I think it's a really good point, is that it really is. It comes down to relegation, right? It's the thought of, is it something that is actually available to these owners who are putting in, as I said, 500, 600 in the case of Austin FC all in, even moving a team there, then paying the fee. So Precourt, who already owned a team, I forget what he played for Columbus, so let's take that out of it. Yeah, he moved his team and technically bought a new team from the league. And let's say it's like $500 to $600 million, and then ends up getting relegated, right? Just because he's a new team and maybe their talent doesn't work out and they just have a bad season or two. And it's maybe even aggregate like Liga MX was for a while, which I actually found kind of interesting too. It's very complicated, but it was very interesting how that worked, and that's why I think they possibly had to rethink it a bit. It seems like we'll talk about that in a second, maybe. But that's the kind of thing that I think that Americans would have to get their heads around, is some parachute mechanism of getting those clubs out without pulling away funding from the rest of the league, because that still is a problem. As some people pointed out, MLS making money is still somewhat of an issue as well. But I think the lower level clubs were run a little bit better in the sense they were built more sustainably in terms of just operating revenue day to day because they had to be, versus something like they don't know if they're ever going to be promoted or up in a bigger league, versus MLS clubs were built as a hedge to sort of investment capital, right? Kind of like a startup, put in a bunch of money and then eventually gain a bunch of revenue or an overall evaluation that boosts your overall price, right? So that's kind of how those two investments work. And so therefore, if you're building up and up, somebody like Louisville City, who's built over a number of years, built their own facility, slowly owned it, slowly built a women's side, starting this year, has an academy that they built over a number of years, all those kind of things, makes it aware they've met all the requirements, they've won their league, and then maybe they can come in. The question is, how do we get rid of somebody, right? We can almost figure that out to where it's like, hey, you can win USL, but you have to meet these requirements. I think that's fair for promotion almost. How would you guys propose that? Who would you relegate? Anybody in the comments? Who would you relegate? How would you relegate in a way that may just losing the bottom of the league, but maybe have a way of also making it fair for who also has the worst performance? Attendance? I don't know. Get people to games. This is post-COVID world, right? Where we can have people packing in the stadiums. I don't know.
I don't think you should punish people based on their attendance.
Yeah.
Because just some markets are a sexier market than others, right? Mm-hmm. But you basically have to do it on points, because if they're not putting the players forward, then they're not showing that they can play at the same level as other teams in their division, right? So
for me, being a Liga MX fan, I started rooting for León back when they were in first division, and then they went down to second division for 10 years. And following León through 10 years of that second division, I got to meet people and fans from other teams that followed teams that had no chance of coming up because they didn't have a stadium or the money. So those teams in turn would either sell their franchise to a bigger team that wanted to come up to the first division, and they would get compensated with money. But you know what? It made that second division fun because there was a goal to come up to first division. So if the USL and MLS had that agreement, it would make our USL league a lot funner. And then MLS, I bet those teams that don't usually do well, which I'm not too invested there either, I bet they kick it up a couple notches to do better every season. So
yeah,
I'm pro. I love
was chumming the bottom of the league for years, and with their image just terrible. In terms of not trying to build towards what the rest of these clubs do in terms of a community or a stadium or anything like that. So it's like that's what I'm saying is like they may not lose at the bottom of the league, but in merit, it seems like they're not doing all the things the other clubs might be doing to retain that status at the top of what should be the American soccer pyramid. And that's the kind of thing where it's hard to say like what's that. Sporting merit is that's why it has to be determined that way. I think is because it's and why the game makes it. They say the $1 million game or whatever, the $100 million game for the Premier League. To make it in or whatever is what makes the championship, so exciting. And it is the fourth followed league in Europe, actually, in terms of ticket sales. So part of this does come down to, as you guys said, finding a funding mechanism that works for these people to make it viable, where if they do fall out, it's devastating in some ways. You have to sell off your players. You have to reconfigure, but you ended up in that position because you weren't successful, right? Something wasn't working horribly to where, for your fans' sake, you probably should reboot it. And then you also have the boost of when you do come back, to kind of retool and really come back, as opposed to what happens with teams like the Padres, unfortunately, right? We watched them tonight, not as successful as we'd like, but we ended up in this position because they were able to be terrible for years. And that was terrible for us fans. Like it was not fun. It wasn't, but that's what you have to do in American sports because that's the funding mechanism, or the way that they figured out that you can stockpile investment in players and roll it over, is just having a 2 to 3 year period where you just accumulate through, lower or mid-tier play, or almost like lower mid-tier play, and sucking just enough to be in that section. So it is something that we don't want to ever see happen in a sport where it's life or death. You have to fight to stay in, or you have to leave. And I think that's what a lot of us love about that game, over across the pond. And what I've loved about other leagues, and we pointed to Liga MX for years across the border, Victor, and I know they suspended their pro rel recently. So tell me a little bit about like kind of what's going on there as a Leon fan and your perspective, I guess, on that.
Luckily for Leon, they've done good the last 4 to 5 years. But what I liked about the relegation system is you have those teams that are always fighting for as tons at playoffs, which are really fun, right? Playoffs are really fun. But then you have that group of teams that aren't known for making it to the playoffs and are fighting to not go down to the second division. And they invest some money in bringing in some good players and trying to survive. And that kind of makes it fun. It kind of adds some suspense to who's gonna leave the league and what they're gonna do to try to stay alive and stay in the league. So that relegation, that being gone, it kind of sucks because those teams can kind of kick back, relax for a couple seasons, not have to worry about leaving the league, and it sucks for their fans. I think they're gonna get crappy soccer.
No, you look at the Jolos and like they wouldn't be in this league if it wasn't for that mechanism.
Yeah.
Right? Like that's how they got here in the first place, and why they won a lot of San Diegans' hearts is because they had the ability to be promoted and then win the league twice in a row, right? Like you don't get that option unless you're, having that ability. And right now they don't. So if Cholo started tomorrow, they wouldn't, and that's the thing that's people don't talk about, I think, a little bit when they're kind of poo-pooing on American soccer, especially in this town, and possibly favoring the other side of the border, is that we both have a problem right now, and we do need to focus on like what's going on with some and some of what's happening there. But maybe that's why they called it some. There's always something happening that we might not want as fans. But the Chappie and Oscar had a good conversation here in the in the messages, or the chat, as some would call it. I was trying to think of the word, and I was like, chat. That's the word. It's 420, everybody. Just kidding.
You're doing great.
Sort of. But Spain, yes. For Spain, they have the T2s, right? So they have their T2 teams for like Barcelona 2, Madrid 2, and they actually play in the second division. They can't be promoted and they can't be relegated. So they're just kind of floater teams, whereas Oscar was saying, I think you would have to get rid of those teams. And I think that there is I felt more drawn to what Oscar is saying, but what Chappie is saying does make some form of sense, that if you had a parachute for possibly certain teams, but by being added to the league, let's say that teams that were newly added to MLS in the last 5 years who had this massive upfront investment, you give them the ability to not be relegated, you give them a grace period or whatever. That could be possible as well, to say, hey, we can't relegate these teams. So that's why, hey, if you are the third lowest team, because the other two that are lowest right now were just added, right? So it is kind of what we were talking about with the Super League. It does de-incentivize certain teams, but those teams may not be there already, like Austin, as I was saying. As much as you may dislike them or like them, they may have a few years to figure it out, versus New England, who's been here for almost going on 30 years almost, and still hasn't changed their crest. I think they literally have the same one that they entered the league with. So you end up with clubs like that, where it's like, they haven't evolved, or they haven't changed from MLS 1, which is crazy when you think Kansas City used to be called the Wizards, and how far that club has come from something that almost folded to now being one of the more successful clubs in the league, right? There's always a chance for these clubs to change if they do it correctly, and if they find the right ownership and really engage the fans and the supporters. That's really what it's about. So it depends on how you do it, but there is options. And I like this discussion, because there's really a lot of different ideas here, and I think that we're figuring it out. We're going to solve it here tonight, guys. We figured it out. So good job. We can do Pro Rel now. So you guys have any other thoughts on just kind of like two teams or tiering structures? Otherwise,
I just want to correct you on the Kansas City Wizards. They were never the Kansas City Wizards. They were only called the Kansas City Wiz.
That's right. The Wiz.
Wiz was not short for wizard. I saw a video on this. I will die on this hill. But
what is it named after? Do you know? Just the Wiz? They're the Wiz.
Kansas City Wiz.
I thought it was Wizards. I just always thought
I did too.
Well, I guess it's because Washington, in my lifetime, when I was like very remembering, like I remember watching the Washington Bullets play a game. And then I remember when Michael Jordan ended up playing for the Washington Wizards very briefly, because he came and played a game against the Bucks when I was living in Milwaukee and scored like 20 or like not 20, like 40 points. It was incredible. So like those kind of things like stick with you weirdly. I don't remember why. But anyway, that's one of the things where I've always thought like Wizards anytime in a sporting context is if it's Wiz, it's Wizards. So that's where I just assume. So is there like an actual thing? It's just Wiz?
Nope, it's just
Cheese Wiz?
It was just Kansas City Wiz.
It's,
I thought it was Wizard too. It makes sense for Wizard, but
yeah,
just straight up Kansas City Wiz. Yeah. And then they rebranded to the much better Sporting KC.
It's like the locomotive. Like it's just like it's like a term that like you're like I'm gonna throw a term together with the city, and that's gonna be your club name, and like San Diego Loyal, but like even like to the weird. This is like the 15th degree of that. Like we're just gonna pull a term in, and then we're gonna say that that's now a thing. Wiz, yeah, I was gonna say that's a Philly thing, Cheese Whiz, but yeah, Wiz. The Wiz was a great movie. That's true. It's a great movie to watch today, especially. You're doing stuff. But yeah, no, it's funny to think about kind of the possibilities with a lot of the stuff in terms of where this is all going and where we've started with American soccer and where we've ended up is a real just thing in itself. This is the best worst.
Oh God, it's right after my own heart.
Bringing it back to local. Here.
The AAF lasted longer than the ESL. Let that.
Did any of you guys make it out to a San Diego Fleet game?
I went to the home opener.
Really? How was
I sat on it was so fun. The football was terrible.
It was great. I heard it
was great.
Fun. Yeah.
The atmosphere great. Gameplay not so much. We had that crazy no look behind the back pass that somehow ended in a completion. That was weird and amazing all at the same time. It was wet. I remember it rained the whole day. It rained during the middle of the game. I was soaked. My dad was soaked. But damn it, it was fun. I would have done it again in a heartbeat.
Yeah. It seemed my brother said he went. It was awesome. And I was like, oh, I really wanted to go. And I was like, I probably would have gone if they had a full season. I think I would have probably ended up at like 1 or 2 games just to go to tailgate and like hang out, see the old. That was kind of my thing was like, I kind of just want to do stuff at the stadium before they tear it down, which they have now, right? You can't make more memories there. So I just wanted to make a couple more before they had to get rid of it and just honestly think and reminisce about stuff. And it was fun to go to 1904 games and a couple other things that I could go to before they did tear it down. But yeah, that was definitely a regret as I never got to a San Diego too soon gone from this world, San Diego Fleet, that we couldn't get in there. Chappie's asking us, what do we do today? Yeah, Chappie's asking, was that their name? Yeah, the team was called San Diego Fleet. It was military themed, but that was all. A super single entity, Chappie, where it was literally like formulated in a boardroom, probably in Texas somewhere. I don't know. But the name was
their
Fleet,
hat laying around somewhere.
Their merch wasn't terrible. They had a cool jacket. It wasn't the worst. But yeah, that was their name. The Fleet, San Diego Fleet. Tom will be back in a second. What did we do today? I did a lot of work. And by that I mean some work, but yeah, I did with everything having with the Super League. Obviously, was somewhat distracted with Twitter. Every time you go check, you got 20 minutes later, you look up. I'm like, my emails. Gotta get back to work. What did you do today, Victor?
I was telling Drew when we were chatting before the podcast.
Go Fleet, baby.
Drove down. Yeah, I like their gear.
It is. It's good. It's not terrible. It's great.
No, dude, they had a great logo. They had great colors.
Yeah.
Just terrible.
Yeah, exactly.
So today what I did, Chappie, to answer your question, I drove not knowingly. I drove down to the shop and I parked in their guest parking, and the wife and I walked up and we looked at the shop and it looked closed. Everything was closed, but I always do the thing where I go and try to pull the door and the door opens. And I walk in with my wife and there's a guy there like pressing shirts and he goes, "Hey," and I go, "Hey." And he was very confused on why I was walking into the store at around 12:30 in the afternoon. And it was later when I was reading Discord and I was reading, I think it was Luis posted the hours. I think they were done from 9 to 11 a.m. So I was there like a whole hour later, just walking in. I go, "I'm here to pick up my season scarves." I got the one when they surprised me here at my house, but I went to go pick up. I have 2 more season tickets, so I went to go pick up some more scarves, and I never got the patch and the pin, which are amazing. If you guys haven't gotten them, you guys are gonna love them. They look pretty cool. But yeah, they were very confused of why I was walking into the shop. But you know what? You gotta love the office, man. They were very welcoming. Weston came out, said what's up. It was, I saw him on Saturday. We were chatting over the phone earlier that morning because I told him on Saturday, hey, I gotta add one more season ticket. He emailed me, hey, got you. Your ticket's added. How do you want to pay for it? And so added that, and you gotta love it, man. But they were super confused of why I was in there.
Yeah, shout out real quick to anybody. Call Weston or call the season ticket team if you do want to be in 109. We're gonna have some news on Thursday that'll probably blow your socks off a little bit. If you weren't on Together Thursday last week, you would already know as a member. But if you are not, the best way to ensure your ability to be with the locals is be a season ticket holder member in the section 109. So call them and try and do that now. Before we let people know what we're going to try and do, because I believe that it will fill up very quickly, if not totally to capacity right after that. So just something to keep in mind always if you haven't already done that, or if you want, as Victor said, just add a ticket. Maybe you're adding a family member, roommate, friend, whatever, that you're like, hey, maybe I just want a second one here, and you can afford it. Maybe your stimulus money came through and you're like, hey, my taxes weren't as bad this year as I thought, or maybe I got a little money back and I'm going to get a second ticket. So anything like that I would do soon, just to let you guys know who are keying in here and hanging out with us. And again, we'll do this again in a couple nights if you want to. Otherwise, we'll be there and then we'll record and drop it into your feeds as a actual podcast. And then this might be, something. We'll see what this is. But this was fun hanging out with you guys. I appreciate you guys giving me the time on very short notice. Tom, I roped into this about 10 minutes before the hour. And then Victor, as we said, was supposed to appear, but we want to make it more of an actual show for you guys, since next week we're going to, next Tuesday, the 27th, just a promo again, at 8 p.m. We will have all of the podcasts for Loyal together. Maybe not all, but we have attempted to get all of them. We will see who shows up. We know Two Balls. We know Fairweather. We're hoping for Jordan Carruth. Darren Smith is a busy man. We will see if we get maybe just a picture of him up. We can pretend we can talk to him. And then Jordan can say what Darren would say. That'd be funny. But something like that. Lance from the Loyalist as well. So anybody who would like to join us next Tuesday, that'll be kind of a fun group podcast for it, like the Avengers, but a podcast with too many people talking over each other. That's our version of the Avengers, I guess. So yeah, I don't know if the Loyalist pod's still a thing. He's not responding within our messages, Luis. It's a great question, but if he wants to hit us up, I know that Lance's podcast it's determined based on the access that he does helping produce the is it Total Football, something like that, one of the football podcasts out there that is a conduit that helps him get some of the great interviews that he gets, that I always found kind of enlightening about certain players, which was nice. But yeah, Sport Clips, just anytime that Darren's on Sport Clips, we really need it, so we can do that as well. But Chappie went to the office. He was telling us about his 420 story, because that's why he asked, which was he went to the office today. I have an important request. We need to do something regarding Warren's license frame. Oh, yeah, I think we're gonna have to get a drill out and do something with that. Today would have been the fun day, though. We could have made it 420 themed license plate, but I think instead we are just gonna have to buy him one from the shop and then record a video of us going out and then doing that to his thing, and then clear it maybe with their social. We'll just post it. I think that would be a great idea. Tom,
you guys do that for Bum TV, man. That'll be a nice Bum TV episode.
Welcome to a production meeting, guys. We're sitting in one. Anybody hanging out with us right now is in this production meeting right now, because that's what happens when I get stiffed on a live show. Is that we end up having a great run here, but it becomes a production meeting after a while. We just come up with concepts of other things we can do when we get back together, which again should be here in about a month or so. In the next month or so, we should be able to start getting together and shooting some fun stuff, which, as you said, is fun. And great shout, Victor, because this Friday, I think we're going to kind of roll out just some branding and stuff on the YouTube page here to say, hey, this is Bum TV officially, and drop that ramen video on the 23rd as well. So that is finally coming. You get to see Warren eat the ramen, and he is just a champion. I can't describe, like, everyone else's face is just melting off, and they're like, and Warren's just like, hot. Yeah. That's my best impression.
I can't wait to see that. I can't wait to see that.
This week,
I
the
love
23rd
that
ball. It's dropping. And I was going to get to this real quick with Espen before we try and close this out, because I know everybody, at least I know Victor's probably a little tired, as all of us are, and just trying to give you time, since we're going to call you back on Thursday as well. But and we'll hang out with anybody who wants to hang out. I just want anybody who's here to feel like they can. He called me out. He's not wrong. It's fake. There's see this R here? It's actually like a misprint. There's like a weird, like one of the R's. See how it's like, like teeth almost out of it. It's not straight.
Yeah, well, now that you pointed out.
Yeah. I don't know. Might be fake. I don't know. Maybe. No, they showed that to me when they got it. I was like, I don't know, it might be wrong, but it is really cool. I'm very excited about it. But yes, if you want to call it fake, that's fine. That's fair. I invented a scarf controversy, so I'll take this one to the grave. But there's more coming to that, by the way. I think on Darren's birthday, we're gonna do something fun. He doesn't listen to any of this, so
about
none of this will get back to him.
About the Chris Garcia sealing scarves?
Yeah, I think so. We're having a production meeting here, just openly with the 12 individuals who are hanging out with us. I think that we're gonna do something there. We'll see. There might be like a what was the thing with To Catch a Predator? Yeah.
Oh no!
Garcia walked in. Yeah. Chris Garcia is a hotel employee. Oh, and then what happened, Chris? Anyway,
it goes so many ways with that.
Yeah, it could be. It could get interesting. So yeah, thanks, Espen, for calling me out. I appreciate it. But Paul Naku back to Bum TV launch, quote unquote. But we're kind of like a soft rollout. Just kind of pushing stuff up and giving some more branding to it. But yeah, the spicy ramen's coming out on Friday. When's that coming out? Friday. Hi, I'm Chris Hansen. Who's the catfisher in this case with Chris though, with the scarf? Just some person leaving their scarf on the ground, and then Chris comes over to grab it, and we're like, "Oh, hi, Chris! I see that you've grabbed this scarf."
There we go. There we go. Yeah, Scene one.
Boom. Shakalaka.
And that's how TV's made, boys.
Yeah, this is pretty much it. This is just three guys in a room with no other dissenting opinions. We don't need multiple X chromosomes. An X and a Y is fine enough. Just that's fine. So this is how TV's made, pretty much, at least up until the 1980s, and then it started changing a little bit. But yeah, Bum TV. Any ideas for that is always welcome. But these are the kind of things that we'll be probably doling out as I can point a camera at people safely and be within 6 feet of them, or get them kind of in spaces where we can do things that are better than them talking masked to a camera, which is also something that I found you can only look at so much of. So it's not from lack of concepts or ideas, to be honest, of things we want to shoot. It's just mainly the ability to do it. But as we said, we'll talk a little bit more on Thursday about what we're doing as a section and getting people back into the stadium, as well as kind of where we're all at. It sounds like a lot of us are pretty vaccinated up and feeling more confident about the ability to, as I've said, just kind of pull a bulletproof vest on our lives, right? And just kind of walk around and feel like, hey, I'm okay. I'm for lack of a better term, I'm not going to be in a space where I feel like I'm going to get infected or infect people around me, which is the bigger deal, I think, for me personally, at least, that I'm worried about. So it just makes me feel better about that. So as we said, that's why we are doing a little alternative tonight. We appreciate you guys joining us. Anything else you guys want to talk about before we jump out of here, or anything? I know you said this, Corbin, thoughts that we're talking about that Thursday. That's like team stuff, SG stuff. Mainly, we're going to try and talk about on the actual show, but this is the fun show. So any fun things in the chat or anything you guys want to talk about, Victor, Tom too?
I just want to say, anyone that's volunteer at Radies, thank you guys. It means a lot to all of us, and I've done it twice so far. Fun experience. I got to meet a few of the members, and it's been fun, volunteering with you guys, and keep doing it, guys. It's amazing. I honestly wasn't going to get the vaccine. I was one of those people that was saying, I'm going to wait on the vaccine and this and that.
Yeah, me too.
But, I can't wait to hang out with you guys. And that was the big decision. And then you started reading more and finding out more about it. I'm happy I did it, and can't wait for more of you guys to help out.
Well, even if you were like, I'm just gonna wait a little bit. I don't want to be the first person in line. I don't want to, And that was me. That's me with a lot of stuff. I used to get the first iPhone, and then I found it every time I did, I had the problem. With it, I had to return it anyway, and go back to the Genius Bar. So it's like, you want to wait. So as a consumer, sometimes you're just like, hey, I want to wait. I don't want to be the first rush. But it was really great to volunteer. Number one, just because you feel like you didn't earn your place in line, but you at least were able to help the line move, and therefore I think kind of were able to slide into that line and feel like you had a place in it a little bit more, which is nice. And so that for me felt great. And just giving back, honestly, I felt like I could do it for 10 hours. It was just like trying to go back and work, as I think I said, about trying to get out of there. But one of the things is about that, we are looking for anybody who does want to do shifts. So if you did do a shift, you did volunteer with Radies before. If you haven't, and you remember and you've seen the emails, please sign up. We can always use more volunteers, especially as we're getting more vaccines. It's harder to get less volunteers because people are getting vaccinated, and then trying to get them to volunteer, additionally is difficult with work and everything. I totally understand that. But if you have some free time or you have extra time, please volunteer that, even if you have totally done your vaccinations and you're getting your vaccine elsewhere. We can always use more volunteers, and it's about 5-hour chunks. You're wiping down chairs, you're telling people where to go, you're collecting forms. It's nothing super serious. You're not getting super dirty or anything like that. You're not interacting with too many people. You're outdoors entirely, almost, in certain cases, and other cases in a very open, indoorish situation, wearing masks, obviously in a very medical situation. So great place to volunteer, just a great way to do it. And anybody wants to do extra volunteering, just let Tom Phillips know via the email or the form that's in there. Just feel free to fill it out again and give more hours, or to message Tom directly via the Discord. He is in there as well, and he's pretty active. So shout out Discord, shout out everybody. 6:00 sad, time for bed. Yeah, I know, bud. It's especially tough when I used to and sort of root for the Brewers low key as well. These kind of games conflict me hardcore, because right now I used to say, hey, the Padres aren't that good. They can give a game or two to the Brewers. That's fine. Good for the Brewers. And everything was fine. Now the reverse is true. I'm almost like, why are we doing this? Like, stop it, Brewers. You guys are the worst. I love you, Christian Yelich, but stop it. You guys are the worst right now. And Urias is a lovable former player, but he's spanking us too much this series. I don't like it. I want to get and Grisham saved a home run, which was nice, but it's funny when it's all Brewers making highlights. I'm like, this isn't great. We need the Padres to get going here. Let's go, guys. So hopefully the bats get going tomorrow night. Paddock also is not my favorite at the moment. So that's all. Leave the Padres talk there. Any thoughts on Padres talk for you guys, so we can bore Corbin to bed here? As a Ohio resident who cares very little about our San Diego baseball problems.
Ohio baseball sucks.
Yeah, that's right. I heard all their pitchers leave because they hate it. They only made movies about how much they suck. You know what? They made that movie in Milwaukee. That's right. Major League was filmed in Milwaukee. So take that. Major League 2 was filmed in actually Cleveland, but Major League 1 was Milwaukee, set for Cleveland at a stadium that no longer exists. But we used to call it the recyclable center because it was made out of aluminum entirely, and it looked like you could pretty much just like put a bulldozer into it and then just like gather it up into a dumpster and take it right to recycling. That's where Hank Aaron used to play. So it's great history lesson, kids. I saw a fight there once between Albert Bell and the Brewers. It's fantastic. Bench clearing brawl. That's a history right there. Would you rather fight one horse-sized duck or 100 duck-sized horses? Says Two Balls. That question. One horse-sized duck. The problem is that when you get it too much, it's like the first scene in Lost World where like the kid comes out and like, one little cute dinosaur, and then there's like 100 of them, and they just like eat her face off or whatever. Like whenever there's 100 of something, like they're going to overpower you just because there's so many of them. You can't outrun them, because you outrun like 5 or 10 of them, there's another like 15 waiting. So I do think if they were trying to fight you, like if they were the 100 were determined to fight you, you would lose. Versus one, you could at least outrun. Possibly, especially as a duck, you could maybe hide under stuff, or you could really do some damage if you slide under that underbelly of a duck. Is very sensitive, and they don't really beat you with their wings. They can kind of stab at you, but if you get under there, you could kind of kick up and take down that horse-sized duck. That's what I'm saying. I don't know.
So he actually had that.
Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
It sounds like you've thought this through too much.
I've thought through a lot of scenarios.
That was actually a question that we got asked at work when we had a new business manager come on, and that was one of his first questions he asked him. And he said, "There's no wrong answer. I just want to know if you are you task on one project or if I can have you as a multitasker." And he wanted our answer first, and then he told us this is why I asked you. So I like that.
Yeah,
That's
I'm a project-based worker. It's why I wanted to be in film in the first place. I'd rather work on one big thing and then move on 6 months later after I like almost killed myself doing it, and then just like start over again and go the next way, as opposed to like 20 little things going on. So that's probably true. Makes a ton of sense. Where were you leaning, Tom? Were you leaning towards the 100 duck-sized horses?
Yeah, I was, and then your argument made sense.
Right? Like the problem is that
I don't want to admit it, but it makes sense.
I'm just saying like open playing, like the playing field makes a lot of difference here too. Is it hilly? Like if it's hilly terrain, I feel like you could kind of sit up on a hill and kick off the little duck-sized horses.
That's my thing. Like you got 100 duck-sized horses coming at you, just kick the fuckers.
Yeah, this is true, Chappie. So we reached an hour in. As I said, we were only going to go 45 minutes. This is what it is. So let's go. We're going in.
Go for it.
Oh my.
Yeah, it's still the giant duck for me. I'd say the giant duck. That's it. So we reached the Seth Rogen part of the thing here. This is legal here, Corbin, by the way. So this is
it is
not for you. You have to wait another 5 years, but we appreciate you joining us. Yeah. That's the thing, is like an aggressive regular duck. Yeah, like ducks are aggressive. So like one giant duck would be terrifying, but I just don't know if it doesn't have like any sort of like attacking, like its wings or whatever. But like even ducks trying to do stuff with wings, it's always awkward. Like they're not grippy. They're like, birds don't use wings. They use them to like push stuff, but other than that, they really can't do much with them. I live with a bird. They're a parakeet, so maybe that colors my impression of how small and what they can do. But like their beaks are terrifying. I will say their beaks are so hard and could crush you. Like if they just put your beak on your neck, they would just kill you instantly. Like if they crushed you. So there is that, but generally, it's difficult. But I do think I think most of us could do a thing to get under or behind the duck, and then their under part belly is exposed, and then it's just one or two kicks right into that sensitive duck area.
Or hell, even take the legs out.
Well, if it's Donald Duck, he just pants him. Never mind. Oh, he doesn't wear.
He doesn't wear pants.
Oh no.
Go ahead, take another hit.
Why? He's already leaving exposed.
He's drawing you in. He wants you to go that route, and then he's just gonna pull out some shit.
Yeah, we're not underestimating the duck. We're just saying one giant duck actually might be less effective than a duck at their current size, because they're almost more awkward at like a football size, like the size that they are, like the size of maybe whatever size you want to say that is. It's just an awkward size versus being giant. I feel like they're almost more avoidable, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Than being like at the duck size, a horse would be less, almost like just its bites would hurt, and horse bites hurt. Like they hurt a lot. Like horse teeth hurt a lot. So like that would definitely suck. But yeah, it is a question that I think I could go back and forth with. But for me, I've settled on big duck because I think that's generally my personality is. As we were discussing, I think that's my like predisposition is to take on a big project. So I think that's why. Yeah, ducks fly together. That's true. That's why one big duck I think is less effective. I think ducks usually fight in, like if I had 5 ducks coming after me, that's terrifying because they're all in different angles. And again, I'm just not used to fighting that size. Yeah, spider you can take on, something tiny. Yeah.
Luis brings up a pretty good point. Ducks fly together. So that means they're organized. So you got to be careful with that. You're gonna have a bunch of ducks that are organized against you.
Yeah, if I had like 4 duck-sized horses, then no, the math is totally different. Yeah. Yeah, Mighty Ducks. Yeah, they were. Yeah. Watch the cartoon as well about the alien Mighty Ducks that come down and then fight in what's based in the pond, and they leave. It's like secret identity. It's a whole thing. But that was one of my more favorite Saturday morning cartoons. Speaking of stuff you should watch on 420, they were anamorphic ducks that fought crime in space. They were like kind of like something like one of the things or whatever. But yeah. So yeah, I was gonna say like sorry, I just got a text from Steve who was like, yeah, my phone died. Again, we've just had a rough night as a group, so we appreciate everybody hanging in there, and again, you guys for showing up and doing this. Tom especially, thanks man for jumping on, and
no problem.
Super short notice, and Victor again, we'll get you rolling here soon. But yeah, Steve said he loves you guys and appreciates you for doing this. No, I was gonna say the what was the Marvel movie with the people in space? Guardians of the Galaxy. It's like Guardians of the Galaxy and Ducks, but they are the Mighty Ducks, and they play hockey. Like, but people don't know that they also lead this life where they fly across the galaxy and fight other people. And they have a secret base under the pond. It's a whole cartoon. I know this sounds like something I'm making up because I just did what I did, but this is a totally real thing.
It is. Never watched it, but I know it's a real thing.
The hero duck dies. It was an awful, like, it's dark. Like it gets real. Two Balls knows what I'm talking about. This is what we're talking about next time out in Two Balls, I guess. Is awkward, like random cartoons from the late 90s and early 2000s. 100 Chihuahuas would freak me out. Chihuahuas they're built to be warning devices. So I think they're like literally built to be alarms, is what I've heard, and bred to be that way. So they just bark and like attack. Like that's what they're built to do. So it would not surprise me at all to 100 Chihuahua-sized horses with Chihuahua temperament would be terrifying.
No, thank you.
Just the square teeth almost would hurt more than like the pinchy teeth. You know? I don't know. I don't know. I said
my neighbor.
I said no.
My neighbor just moved out, but she had a Chihuahua when she lived here. And anytime I walked by her door, I would literally hold my keys in my hand, not to make the dog bark. Because any noise you make, it just barks and keeps on barking. So, yeah, Chihuahuas are definitely an alarm system.
Yeah, they're crazy.
Just built different.
They wake up but there's. Oh yeah. Oh no! What time do they wake up?
No, I just said they wake up and they choose violence.
Yeah. Oh yeah, every day. There's them, and then there's another dog that was bred. I believe it's in Asia, to jump out of your sleeves, so that people would like keep them in their sleeves, and then have them just kind of in there as an attack dog, just in case you like came up on them, and then like the dog would jump out like, "Wah, I'm here, just hanging on the sleeve." They were there for comfort, like hang out with them all day. But yeah,
it's not a dog anymore. That's a weapon.
Yeah, it's like a rocket launcher, but a dog launcher, which I always found interesting. Somebody brought that up during a dog show, and I was like, "That's the best dog show fact I've ever heard." And now I don't remember what breed it was. It wasn't Malteses, but it was and it wasn't Shih Tzus, but it was something. It was something I believe that was from those kind of like more big kind of robes where they have those big arm kind of folds. Which again I believe was East Asia, but a very interesting story for a breed nonetheless. That I was like, no way. In the same dog show, they did a pretty good job of talking about Chihuahuas, so that's where I got my Chihuahua info, as well as just having a brother with one, and his and it's like a purebred, short haired. It's gorgeous for a Chihuahua. It's the prototypical, it looks like the Taco Bell Chihuahua. But is a just yapper, and he talked. Alfie, my dog, was not very vocal until he spent a couple nights staying over at their place with that dog, and then all of a sudden just barks, and very vocal, uses his voice, but not too bad. But I blame the Chihuahua 100%. So yo do not quiero Alfie barking. But no, I appreciate you guys hanging out with me here and giving everybody something to talk and listen to as we've traditionally done here on Tuesday nights, even if it wasn't the traditional show. But I like this. This was fun. You guys have fun?
Definitely. Always have fun.
Yeah, appreciate it. Thanks, guys. Thanks, everybody, for hanging out. And we're going to roll and just maybe see you Thursday here. And then definitely see you next Tuesday at 8 p.m. instead of 9. So a little earlier, which is nice for most everybody, I think. But we'll be doing that and doing it with more friends, even with Two Balls, who's hanging out here with us, and with Fairweather for sure. And then whoever else wants to jump on from our podcast for friends and do a big preview. There's my voice is getting a burp in the back of my throat, and I'm not sure if it's going to burp or not. But thanks, everybody. Thanks, guys. Bye. Take it easy, boys. Andy Bradkin.